Well, thank you guys for joining us. My goodness, my goodness, my goodness. We actually had to cancel the show that we had today scheduled and planned with Dr. Kaayla Daniel. So I apologize for that. We're having some major technical issues, but check this out. I just looked at the clock and it is 11:11 and it was 11:11 at 11 seconds when I hit record on this. So what better time to start a podcast than 11:11 at 11 seconds? Hi. Sometimes things just don't go as planned, right? I mean, this is the second time that we've tried to have Dr. Kaayla Daniel on the show, and for some reason, we were just unable to connect. Our internet was not working properly, and it was just a bizarre situation. So I don't know what was going on there, but maybe the powers that be didn't want us to talk to Dr. Kaayla Daniel. I don't know. So I have a lot of stuff to share with you guys today, and since I'm here in the studio, I just love hanging out with you guys in the chat room and sharing some things that have been going on with me and in our life and all of that. So I really wanted to just kind of hang out with you guys and hang out and see what we can come up with together. And you're probably wondering why. I'll move the microphone. I'm wearing. Can you guys see this? It's a little, it's a makeshift thyroid blocker because you can probably see I've got some lights on me right now. And as Oprah says, when you know better, you do better, right? And this is why I'm wearing the orange glasses today, most every day, actually. And when I'm indoors, I'm covering all my skin. And for a while back, I was learning about how blue light actually affects your thyroid gland because your thyroid sits directly below your skin and your neck. And if you see people on the internet or looking at their cell phones, they'll typically have all of that blue light hitting their thyroid gland right there. And blue light can penetrate the skin and affect your hormone health, oddly enough. And so like I said before, when Oprah said, you know better, you do better, well, now I'm going to start wearing a little neck thing. You know, it's funny because I was thinking about the other day, like with all of this stuff that we live in modern culture, we're learning about how damaging it all is to our life. And we're starting to understand how it impacts human health, right? And then you start realizing like everything that I'm doing is so unhealthy and so damaging in some way, yet we continue to do it. I remember there was a really funny skit on part of Jerry Seinfeld's act, and he was talking about how human beings are so stupid because we're the only creatures that will actually engage in a life-threatening and dangerous act where it requires a helmet, but we'll actually just wear the helmet and continue to do the act. It's kind of the same thing with this where everything we're learning impacts our health so dramatically, but yet we are continuing to do these things that are damaging our lifespan. Before the show, I was looking at I was logging into my email and my Yahoo email, and for some reason I had logged out last night, and then when I logged in this morning, it was like the Yahoo homepage. And I typically never really watch the news, right? Or look at the news. I disengage from all of that stuff because it's negative programming for me. I don't embark, I don't interface with it, I don't do any of that stuff. But I was on Yahoo's front news page because I had to log into my Yahoo email account. And I found out that a guy that was like, I don't know who he is, but he was a guy that was like 41 years old, which is basically my age. I'm 42. And it's just crazy how much of this stuff is going on. So he's 41 years old and he was like a dancer or a music star or something like that. And he just passed away from cancer, 41 years old, and it's like people wondering why are we getting all these diseases? And it's becoming so evident, at least in my mind, that the reason why we're getting all these diseases, these metabolic diseases, is the fact that we're living such unnatural lifestyles. And so we're going to do a show with Kaayla Daniel today, episode 634, which is what this episode number is, about detoxification. But I was having some issues with my computer. It just would not fix itself. And I just now fixed it a few minutes ago, but I had already hung up the phone, and I know she's a busy woman. And so I didn't want to call her back, and I have all this to share. And so I figured, we'll just hang out together and, kind of answer each other's questions and support each other in the chat rooms. And I've got a lot to share, so I didn't want to mess up her schedule. She may have, rescheduled something herself, so I didn't want to do that. And so I figured we'll just have her back on again. But I got a lot of stuff to share with you guys. So I want to share with you some ideas for sleeping that might help you guys. And also, let's see, I got some updates on my mom. Many of you guys know that my mom right now is going through, well, I guess I should say her body, the doctors have mentioned that her body has some extra cells in her breast, and she's going through the typical chemotherapy, no radiation this time, but she's going through that. And before I came here, there was a new member in our Extreme Health Academy, and she's 36 years old, I think, just diagnosed herself with breast cancer as well. And so I want to share with you some ideas, and I'm going to share with her in the forums a bunch of different things that she can do. It looks like she had already had not a breast reduction, but what's the term where you get your breast removed? A mastectomy. And so now she's worried. I think that the doctors are now saying that she needs to have chemotherapy and radiation. And so now she's involved in the Extreme Health Academy, and I told her I'm running out to do a live show, but when I come back, I will definitely help you out. So I've got a lot to share about that, as well as updates from my mom. Got some interesting fasting information with you guys. A lot of people talking about the benefits of fasting, so we'll talk about that. And then an article about, at least according to this guy, that all disease is caused by a lack of this one, quote, vitamin. And then also some news about a popular blood pressure medication recall. So if you guys know anybody who's on blood pressure medication, you might want to forward them to this article that I'll share in just a little bit. And then there's some testing recently with weed killer, and some of what's actually in kids' cereals, like popular kids' cereals. And then, recently we had a guest. I don't know if you guys caught this show, but we had a guest with, what was her name? Krista Gerard. She's just down recently, she was on the show recently, but she's just down in Carlsbad. And we had her on, and she sent me an interesting article about, there was a Civil War prisoner of war study, and it found that the father's stress can affect the lifespan of his children. Crazy, right? So got a lot of really cool things to share, and I just want to let you guys know too of our upcoming show schedule. I know I mentioned this a lot. For some reason, we were unable to have Dr. Daniel on the show today. Some technological glitches. Isn't that funny how this will be the second time that we've tried to have her on? And so sometimes you wonder, is it the powers that be? Is it some universal conspiratorial force that we don't know about that's preventing us from talking? Or is it just a random technical glitch? I don't know. But we're set to talk with her today about detoxification. And so on Friday, we're going to have Dr. Emily Kane on the show. We'll be talking with her about pharmaceutical medication. So that's going to be really fascinating. So stay tuned for that one, Friday, 10:45 a.m. Do you guys know anyone who is on medications? I think who was it? Just a guest we had just recently. He was saying, Dr. Bob Demaria. He's on our YouTube channel. He's not quite on the podcast yet, but he was saying that I think 1 in 3 Americans are on, I think it's 1 in 2 Americans are on 3 to 5 medications on average. Isn't that crazy? And he did this whole thing where he talked about in the beginning of the show where, let's see if I can recount exactly what he said. He was talking about the interactions between specific chemicals and how many chemicals are in one pill pharmaceutical drug, and then the amount of or the percentage of action for a side effect. And he was saying when you get up to about 5 pills, or 5 different pharmaceutical medications, you're up into the millions, or maybe it was billions, of potential side effects. And he was very clear to say that those aren't side effects, those are just effects. These are just effects of the medication. They call that the what is that, LD50? the lethal dose 50, and then the prescribed method of action, which is like, the strength of a substance in order for someone to get a metabolic response, and then they sort of get the averages of those two numbers so that they kill the least amount of people but get the most response. It's really quite spooky, man. So anyway, Dr. Emily Kane this Friday is going to be really cool. The day before Thanksgiving. Wait, is that right? How come I have November 23rd? Is today Wednesday? Today's Wednesday the 21st. It says here on my calendar, November 23rd, Friday. Friday, November 23rd. That's bizarre. Wow, how weird. Okay, so anyway, I guess that's going to be Friday the 26th? My schedules are 20. No, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Tomorrow the 22nd is Thanksgiving. Okay. I thought Google's calendar was misprogrammed or something. Yeah, so Dr. Emily Kane will be on Friday, November 23rd, the day after Thanksgiving here in America, and she'll be talking about pharmaceutical medications. So that's going to be good. If you know anyone with a pharmaceutical drug, make sure to have, or that's taking a pharmaceutical drug, make sure to let them hear that show. And then on Monday, we're going to have Amy Prohl. And I originally heard, she may be a doctor by now, but she was studying a lot with autoimmune diseases, vitamin D receptor sites on the cells, low-dose naltrexone, autoimmune diseases, like I said, and the Marshall Protocol. And if you guys are unfamiliar with Dr. Trevor Marshall down in southern Australia, down in Melbourne, I think, we're going to have him on the show here pretty soon. But he talks and does a lot of work with vitamin D, naltrexone, and autoimmune diseases, specifically Lyme disease. So that guy is really interesting. And so I heard a whole show of her story, Amy Prohl. She was down to like 90 pounds at one point with Lyme disease and almost died. So her journey back to recovery through the Marshall Protocol was pretty fascinating. But she's been doing a lot of work recently on like the human microbiome and the gut health and stuff like that. So that's going to be really cool. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. So let me see if you guys are in the chat room. It looks like you probably are. If we are we broadcasting? I hope we're broadcasting. I don't see that we are here. Let me do a little refresh here. Maybe we're not broadcasting and I'm not broadcasting live. Okay, yeah, we are. Yeah, so many of you guys that are watching are probably wondering what the heck happened to Dr. Kaayla Daniel. So I apologize for that. We'll get her back on. It looks like Adriana is here from New Jersey. Mark is from Holland. No way. That's awesome. Beverly from the UK. You're an animal. I know you're down in San Diego. Rebecca. That's awesome. You're a member of the Extreme Health Academy, known as Beck, inside the forums there. So that's awesome to have you here. And Sean Drabell says, turkey tail mushroom research shows profound effect on immune modulation in regards to breast cancer. 4 grams a day. Paul Stamets of Host Defense has a YouTube video on YouTube discussing the research. Interesting you bring him up, Sean, because we're going to get Paul Stamets on the show here pretty soon. We've been going back and forth. Last time I talked with him, he was at Burning Man, I think. And yeah, we're going to get Paul Stamets of Host Defense back on the show. Adinda is from Egypt. No way. Karen Cruz is from Napa Valley. This is awesome. You're an animal. Just arrived. Yeah, so you're an animal. If you're just kind of tuning in, the reason why we don't have Dr. Kaayla Daniel on the show is we had some technical issues, which I was able to fix, but I let her go, and so we didn't want to reconnect with her because I think she had some other stuff going on. So that's the reason why we're going to reschedule with Dr. Kaayla Daniel. So the thumbnail for this particular show is a little bit odd. So have you guys been able to catch any of our past shows? I want to bring up, so if you guys are familiar with our shows, also too, I want to tell you guys that we are going to be doing a Black Friday deal. I should probably tell you this. Let me go back into the chat room here. If you guys are interested in any Black Friday stuff that we're selling, we don't actually sell any of these things. We just are connected to the companies. This is how we keep the show free, and your support helps us to continue to go. So if you guys are interested in any of the products that are in our store, we've kind of gone through and listed the ones that are having Black Friday sales. So I'll put a link in the chat room there for you. But yeah, so some of our shows, our recent shows on the website, if you guys are following us on iTunes or subscribe to us on iTunes, you're probably wondering, like, some of these shows are really old. Well, the reason why is because we're really backed up. We've got like 20 shows that need to be put into iTunes. So we kind of do a new show every few days. So one of the more recent shows we did on our website, if you follow us on iTunes, is a show I did with my wife, Kate, with our little kids. We talked about why schools are dangerous, the 3 main causes of autism, blocking blue light, and a lot more. So that was episode 595. 594 was with Adam Bergstrom. We talked with him about shattering health myths, eating on time. So that was a cool show. It was episode 594. And then 593 was a show that I did about blue light, cancer, bone health. Did some listener questions. So that was fun. Episode 593. And then 592 was with Stephanie Seneff. And does glyphosate cause cancer? I'm going to go out on a limb and say it does. I'm going to say it does. What do you guys think in the chat room? Do you think glyphosate causes cancer? I don't think glyphosate alone causes cancer. I think glyphosate is part of a much larger issue that we have going on in our culture with regards to human longevity and our health. If you guys follow the Bible or not, it doesn't really matter. But remember that verse in the book of Genesis. I'm laughing because it's been so long since I've read the Bible. I used to read the Bible. I've actually read it about 3 times, I think, all the way through, from cover to cover, Genesis all the way to Revelation, back in the days when I was, really into that. And I probably studied it with different speakers and going through and taking notes probably 5 times. So, but that was like 20 years ago. So it's been a long time since I've studied the Bible. But in the book of Genesis, it talks about, now whether or not this is true or not, it doesn't really matter. But so just to, kind of let you know where I'm at. But in the book of Genesis, it talks about the curse of God and Adam and Eve sinning and all that kind of stuff. But then it's interesting because it says that one of the curses that God has, now this is interesting. There's 2 main curses, and one of them, or 3. One is that man will have to earn a living by the sweat of his toil, which means he will have to work hard and probably do things he doesn't love to do, which is interesting, right? Very, very interesting curse. Because it insinuates that before that, everyone would have loved what they were doing. I don't understand. So that was weird. The second was that women would now have pain giving in childbirth. So now childbirth would be painful. That was a curse on the bloodline of Adam and Eve. Interesting, right? I don't know what to make of that. Kind of bizarre, kind of weird, right? And then the third curse was that man's lifespan will now be subjected to and diminished to 120 years. So now you think, like, anyone today, if you said, hey, the average lifespan instead of being 75 is going to be 120, people would be like, wow, that's amazing, right? But at that point, people were living longer, at least according to the Bible, and 969 years was apparently the oldest guy, Methuselah, that lived in the Bible in the book of Genesis. And so now their lifespan would be cut down to 120 years. So regardless of whether or not that's true, it's interesting that a lot of ancient cultures have people living very long time. A lot of people say now today there are people that are 500 years old. I put something on our Instagram a while ago of a Chinese monk who supposedly was, I think he lived till he was 256 years old. So it's interesting, right? I mean, we should be living a lot longer than we are. And so what's causing us to break down the way we're breaking down? The show that we did, episode 592 with Stephanie Seneff, does glyphosate cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma? I don't know. I mean, getting into a little bit of my mom's story, she is dealing with some extra breast cancer cells, or breast cancer. I'm not even convinced she has cancer myself, or she does, her body does, to be honest, because I got something to share with you from a Dr. Stephen Hines. If you guys are familiar with him, he's been on our show a couple times with regards to breast cancer. So make sure I don't forget that. But my mom used to spray our backyard she would spray with Roundup, which is filled with glyphosate. And she ended up, about 5 years after she started doing that, she ended up getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Her body did. And then our dog at the time, who was always out there sniffing those same flowers that my mom was spraying with glyphosate, our dog, our cute little Snuggles, he's the cutest little dog ever. But I loved him so much, little Snuggles. But he ended up getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as well. So that's very anecdotal. I can't prove that. But, there's that groundbreaking lawsuit going on with that guy, I forget what his name is, who won $250 million, which now Monsanto is appealing. But apparently the judge upheld the original ruling, but Monsanto is going to appeal this all the way to the bank, probably just to save face, because I don't think they're hurting for cash, and appealing all of these rulings and judgments from the courts is probably in their best interest, and they probably want people to think that they believe in their product. But this guy won $256 million. I'm not sure how much of it he's actually going to be able to keep, but in any event, he won this amount of money, proving that glyphosate caused his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So does it cause cancer? Is it the only cause of cancer? Or is there something much bigger going on in our culture that's causing us, like I read that story today of that 41-year-old, I think he was in a boy band is what it was, guy today who passed away, 41 years old, of cancer. I didn't even go into the story, so I don't know anything more about it, but I'm just looking at these people. I've got people in my life that have died of cancer. A best friend from high school years ago. I found out at 36 years old that she passed away from colon cancer. I've got another friend from high school. Her 16-year-old son recently passed away from sarcoma, I believe. Another friend from mine in high school, her husband passed away from cancer. I didn't know him, but I knew her. I was friends with her in high school. And what's going on with all these cancers? People are saying now that it is 1 in 2 if you're born after 1960. I was born in 75. So, that's crazy, right? That's a 1 in 2 chance that the average person, not us in the chat room and not us doing this show, because we understand the mechanism of action behind cancer and what causes it. But man, I'm telling you, if you're living just an average, normal, standard default life in today's culture, you're looking at 1 in 2. And then if you happen to be the one who doesn't get cancer, whose body doesn't get cancer, then you're in some sort of high percentage rate, right, for the number 2 cause of death, which is heart disease. Heart disease and cancer seem to go back and forth. And so what are we doing about this, and why is this happening? And so that's, I've got some ideas, some thoughts about that. Got a lot of stuff to get to. So going back to the Hope Wellness. So I've shared with this on the show a little bit, but this is interesting with regards to breast cancer. So this Dr. Stephen Hines, he's a friend of ours, and he has a clinic in St. Angelo, Texas, in southern Texas, right on the border. He's got 2 clinics, Hope Wellness and Hope Wellness Center. And he's like the Dalai Lama of parasites and bugs and things. And so he does a lot of work with people and getting these things out of people's bodies. But he's got a center that he runs. I think he runs his business in St. Angelo, Texas. And then he has his actual clinic like 20 miles away over the border in Mexico. So one is called hopewellness.com and the other one's called hopewellnesscenter.com, I think. And so anyway, he was explaining to us about some of these things that are happening. So when he was saying that he's got a lot of medical friends in the medical field because he himself is a doctor as well. And so what he was saying that there's a lot of work coming out recently with this Dr. Tullio Simoncini. That was popularized about maybe 6-8 years ago. And he was talking about the alkaline and acid forming effects of cancer stem cells and actual cancer tumor cells, and how changing the pH of these cells actually causes them to die, right? So he's injecting sodium bicarbonate directly onto the tumor. In some bizarre ways, he's able to get these really expensive instruments to do this. And so he'll actually do a surgery, and I think he's in Italy. I don't know if he's still able to do it. I think they've recently pulled his license because you can't have a guy out there, actually helping people. So, so he was doing these surgeries where he was actually injecting the tumor cells themselves without causing them to break apart, because that's the issue. That's one of the main issues with doing a biopsy, is that you cause these cancer tumor cells to break apart and metastasize, and they get spread out throughout the body, and then they sort of set up camp in another area of the body where the body has a weak energy field. So he was somehow able to do this without breaking the things apart, the tumor apart, and injecting it directly with sodium bicarbonate, and having tremendous success with these expensive tools and machines. Okay, so he was finding, based on the color and based on the response and based on his research and his biopsies, that these things were no different than a fungus. And so that's why you have the work of, what is his name? Cancer as a Fungus, Dr. Doug Kaufman. He has cancerasafungus.com, I think. He's been on our show, very nice guy. But Dr. Tullio Simoncini is saying that all cancer is a fungus. Now, since then, it's been kind of not debunked, but kind of showing that cancer, it can't just be described as one thing. It's a lot of times many things. So some of it is fungus, some of it is not, right? So in any event, the cancers that he was working on were responding directly to this baking soda. Crazy, right? You can get baking soda for like $5 at your grocery store. The aluminum-free, whatever it is, Bob's Red Mill, you can get that. And it's unbelievable. So anyway, because of this work, this Dr. Stephen Hines was doing some research, and he was asking his friends who are in the medical industry who do biopsies from women who have lumpectomies. And he was asking them, hey, do you ever assay those things? Do you ever test those biopsies for fungus, or do you only, because they have two basic tests that they could run, that any lab could easily run. And he said that he was shocked at their response. So their response was, no, we've never tested once for that. And he's like, really? You've never tested it? It's the same amount of money, doesn't cost anything more. Why wouldn't you? Well, the reason why they don't test it for fungus is because, if that's a fungal mass in someone's breast and you're able to treat that, you're going to save, obviously, the patient hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you're going to cost the insurance company millions of dollars if you start finding that a lot of these tumors are actual fungal masses. So what he began to do was to treat his patients with high-dose antifungal IV therapy. And he was finding that like 60% of the patients were responding to IV high-dose fungal antifungals via IV. So he's finding like 60% of his patients, or 65% of his patients, responding to this. So then it's like, okay, well, he can't do biopsies, but he's showing a response to a fungus. So either the cancer itself is a fungus and they're one and the same thing, or it's an actual fungus and it's not cancer at all. So, but the fact that they won't do any testing on these things is just crazy. So this is sort of leads into what's been going on with my mom. She was spraying with glyphosate years ago in 1995, in the mid-90s, when we lived in a couple cities away from where we live now, and came down with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, given 10% chance to live, had chemotherapy, had radiation, had surgery, had bone marrow transplant. I had to drive up to the City of Hope and donate my platelets because I was the only match for her. And that was like an hour drive. And I think I did that as an hour drive one way. And I think I did that through LA traffic like 3 days a week for a series of months because I was the only match for her. And so you know, it's amazing. She actually made it through that. I cannot believe that she made it through that. Lost all of her hair, aged like 20 years in a matter of a few years. Just witnessing her go through this barbaric treatment was just a life-changing experience. And for any of you that are listening, that you know friends that have gone through cancer, I mean, it's a life-changing experience. And so, anyway, the shocking thing was that she made it through that, and that was 1995, which is crazy. So then, a series of years later, she came down with lung cancer, spots on her lung. Now, here's the thing when it comes to these things. Now, she was getting biopsies, and she's very familiar with what we do here, and she's very open to it. But when it comes down to it, she was very afraid, and I totally understand that. And so she had biopsies, which I wouldn't have done, but she wanted to know if they were actually cancer, and they came back and said it was. But I don't know. If they're not testing for fungus, man, if they're not testing for it in the breast, they're obviously not going to test for it anywhere else, right? So she had, I think, 1.5 lobes of her lung removed. And then she made it through that. I don't think she had chemotherapy for that. That was probably about 10 years ago. And then now her body's coming down with some extra cells in her breast. And so, this is just, it's an epidemic in our culture. For some reason, it's like the buzzword. It's the thing that we all fear because we've all been programmed to really be sensitive to that word, that C word. And it's really quite sad. And I think that part of the culture, part of the mass media and the quote powers that be want us to think that these things are genetic. That's why we had that whole genome project, right? Decoding the human genome so that you can correlate and tie up. There's a lot of money in that. It's not like they were just trying to figure out what the genome was so that they can help people. I mean, the reason why they do these things is because you can map a particular illness to a gene. And if you can map that, then you can come up with a pharmaceutical drug that fixes that. But then you can also disempower people and think that I am beholden to my genes, right? So that's the real issue. And so it's not as if the scientists and the pharmaceutical companies and the government and all these things are like these benevolent agencies that want to help solve human health issues. There's money in it, and so that's fine, but it's funny that the naivete that people have when it comes to these things, thinking that they're, kind of doing this to help humanity, they're doing it to make money. And so because this is such an issue in our culture today, they want us to believe that we're subject and beholden to our genes. And that was the whole point. One of the whole points of the Human Genome Project was to get us to believe that if you have a particular gene, then you are going to get this disease. And oh, by the way, we also have a cure for that disease in the form of some kind of pharmaceutical product. And so that's the whole point. And so now you have women out there with the BRCA1 gene or the BRCA2 gene getting preemptive mastectomies because sometimes even double preemptive mastectomies because that gene runs in their family. And so, the money that's made off of these preemptive surgeries is itself quite a lot of money. And so it causes us to be disempowered. And, the big story was years ago is Angelina Jolie had a double mastectomy. Now, I come from a more sort of conspiratorial mindset. I don't know if it's even conspiratorial. I just, for me, like in that case with Angelina Jolie, I'd say, well, in order for me to believe that, I just have to see her boobs if they're there, I mean, I hate to be sort of crude about it, but I don't believe, I just, prove, I mean, that's a claim that someone's making in the public, right? This is what she did. I would have to see proof of that in order to believe it. And so I wouldn't be at all surprised if they got high level, celebrities to sort of be a part of this, because there'd be no way for anyone to prove unless she were to go topless somewhere, right? And if she did have the surgery, then I do feel bad. I don't want to see anyone suffer. But all of these claims that are made in the public, we just assume to be true. They tell us these things. They tell us there's 7 billion people on the planet. They tell us that this, that, and the other. They tell us all these claims. These are basically, in a legal format, these are just claims with no absolute proof to back them up. Now, there probably are 7 billion people on the planet, and Angelina Jolie probably did get a double mastectomy. But the point is that we need to start questioning everything that's sort of given to us, and question the particulars too. So, all of that to say that it wouldn't surprise me if high-level celebrities were sought out to and paid money to have these stories written about them. You know, it sounds like a lot of weird stuff, and maybe it is. I don't know. But regardless of all of that, the thing is that we've been systematically dumbed down by our culture to believe that we're subjected to and beholden to our genes. And nothing could be further from the truth. The other day, I did an Instagram post, and I was asking people, hey, like, what guests would you like to see us, have on the show? And if you go to our Instagram, you can tag a guest if you'd like us to interview them, and we'll put them on in our little database. And a lot of people were saying, Dr. Bruce Lipton. And he's already been on the show. And Dr. Lipton is an awesome guy. But he talks about epigenetics and how it's what rides above the genes that causes the genes to express themselves. And then you get into Dr. Jack Kruse's work, the light piece, and how light causes mitochondrial stimulation to happen, and the mitochondria control the genetic expression. So even from a light perspective, you're saying that the genes are just, they take the marching orders from the mitochondria. But then Dr. Bruce Lipton goes a bit further and talks about epigenetics. And then you go even further with the work of like Dr. Richard Massey and some of the people we've had on recently about recall healing and family constellation therapy. And so you can see there's like multiple layers before you even get down to the physical, sort of the meat and bones, quite literally, of our health. That is the genetics, and you get into quantum mechanics, you get into physics, you get into spirituality and family constellation and that kind of thing. And all of those things preempt and come before what's happening on a physical level. And so the idea that our genes are just like, oh, there's nothing we can do about them is just bizarre, and it's not true. And all of us have so much more impact on how our life plays out than we even know. And so it's challenging, because with all those people that I mentioned before that I know that have had either a child die of cancer, or their husband, or this friend of mine, this woman from high school, she passed away from colon cancer, 36 years old. It's just, I'm just shaking my head, because it's like, it's an epidemic in our culture. And this is why we do what we do on Extreme Health Radio, to empower everyone to understand that we actually have more power than we think we do. I shared this article here. This kind of ties in a little bit. First of all, let me go into the chat room and see what you guys are chit-chatting about. You guys are having a good old time. Adriana says, are you from Egypt, Adriana? I think you said that you were from Egypt before. That's so cool. There would be more people suing Monsanto due to glyphosate causing cancer. I agree. More people. I mean, there's a class action lawsuit right now with over 400 people that have been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so there may even be more that might be more, or there might be multiple class actions with hundreds of people within each class action suing Monsanto. But have you guys ever looked at that creepy video of George Bush Sr.? You can look it up on YouTube. George Bush Sr. doing sort of a walkthrough tour of Monsanto. And they were talking, and it was so crazy. This was like in the mid-90s. And they were talking, all of them standing around. And then one of the Monsanto executives said, oh, well, we're we're trying to get this new product done, but we can't get approval from the FDA or something like that. It was something to that extent. They were trying to do something, and they were being given the runaround by the government. And George Bush Sr. says, "Oh, that's okay. We can make, I'll make sure that happens," or something. I mean, this is like, I was going to say our government, but they're not our government. They're people that are in what they think is a role in a position of power. But they're in bed with these mega corporations. And now Monsanto just recently, I think they changed their name, or they became a part of their parent company, which is now Bayer Pharmaceuticals. So they're trying to get away and run away from that name, Monsanto. Monsanto. It's just absolutely nuts. And so, the idea that we can listen to whatever the mainstream news is telling us, whatever, quote, our government is telling us, or whatever these pharmaceutical and drug companies are telling us, the idea that we can trust these people and allow them to alter our consciousness and alter our mind and let them in any way to our subconscious mind, it's just absolutely crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. See, the thing that's happening too with these commercials, and you hear them on radio, you hear them on TV, or you watch them on TV, even if you turn them off, I mean, these things are getting into your subconscious mind, and they're altering the way you think and the way you view the world. And this is why I don't watch any TV, because all this stuff it's so disempowering, and we have to protect our God-given bodies and our God-given lives, our God-given subconscious mind. We need to protect all of that stuff from what's going on in the culture. Adriana says, cancer is caused by the toxic chemicals in our food and in our environment. Perfumes in any chemical can be put into products labeled perfumes. Adriana, here's a little step further. Why does the body break down when it's exposed to these chemicals? Why does the body respond the way it does to these chemicals? That's kind of a bigger question, right? So the reason why it breaks down is because of what Dr. Jack Kruse would call our redox potential, our ability to heal and to restore electrons and have that electricity in the body. And so, according to Dr. Doug Wallace and Dr. Jack Kruse, non-native EMF is responsible for 98% of all diseases. Non-native EMF, what is that? That's dirty electricity in your walls. That's cell towers. That's magnetic fields. That's stray voltage. That's dirty electricity in your walls, Wi-Fi, 5G, blue light. All of this stuff is non-native EMF. It's not native to our biology. And that, on a physical level, see, they think, Dr. Kruse thinks that that's the cause of all disease, which I'm not even going to say, I don't even think that's the cause of all disease, but purely on a physical level, then that is what is causing disease. And so that's breaking our bodies down to the extent that it is reacting now to these chemicals. So now our bodies can't even sort of deal with these chemicals because it's already been broken down by these non-native EMF, radiation and blue light specifically, which is why you see me wearing this little thing here, protect my little thyroid. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on here with our modern culture. Oh, you're in New Jersey. Awesome. Okay, cool. Cladman says, is it normal that the company has hidden these facts for decades? Yeah, right? In today's culture, it's all about profit, right? If the government and pharmaceutical companies were creative enough to be able to have enough creative energy to figure out how to profit from something like CBD, THC, and marijuana, cannabis. The actual word marijuana is actually a government word, just like conspiracy theory. These are all words that are created by the government to alter our perception of these substances. So if they were creative enough to figure out how to profit from them, then all of a sudden they would be legal. It's just like alcohol. That's why alcohol is legal, because of profit, right? You're an Animal says, I'm just listening and just jogging my mind. Yeah, so there's a lot going on. Monsterat Celes. Gosh, is that how you say your name? That's awesome. That's quite a name. Hello, I'm new. I just discovered your channel. I'm very happy to have discovered you. Thank you to your compromise to all of us that from the beginning throughout this world was wrong. A big huge from Spain. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, glad you're here from Spain. That's amazing. Do you have a list on your website with the most important things to do? You know what? I don't. But you know what? I'm in the process of putting together a course in our Extreme Health Academy for like the 12 pillars and foundations of health. And the sort of thing that kind of bothers me about our culture or our natural health and alternative holistic health community today, the thing that bothers me is that it's primarily focused on food. And if food and diet and exercise were the end all be all, there would never be another diet program. There would never be another keto. There would never be another raw vegan diet. There would never be another paleo diet. There would never be another late night infomercial for some kind of Tony Gazelle, what does he call that? I was laughing the other day at a YouTube video, or Tony Little with the gazelle. I call him Tony Gazelle. But yeah, you never see these late night infomercial products with these things that are trying to get people to buy them because, they're fitness, home gym machine kind of a thing. The reason why is because it's the wrong genome. It's the wrong genome. You're looking at the DNA, which is the physical. The DNA is basically like the scaffolding upon which our actual life force, which is electrical in nature and repositories of light in nature, biophotonic in nature. The genes and the DNA are just the scaffolding upon which our actual very biophotonic substance hangs upon. And so when you're looking in the nuclear genome of the DNA, you're missing the mitochondrial genome. And this is what controls the DNA itself. So people are looking in all the wrong areas. And that's why Dr. Cruz was able to lose 133 pounds in 11 months without diet, without exercise. Because he was able to affect his genetic expression through his mitochondria and upregulate his body's ability to heal, to lower his inflammatory processes in his body, and to improve his redox potential through altering his genetics via the mitochondria. And so it's the mitochondria that we need to focus on. Light, water, and magnetism. That's why if you go to our store, Oscar, hey, what's up? Great to have you here. Haven't seen you in a while, by the way. But I've seen you commenting on a couple of our videos, so it's awesome to have you here in a live show. But that's why in our store we have light, water, magnetism as the main aspects, and then EMF, detoxification, immunity. So in the 12 foundations and pillars of health that I'm going to be doing a course on inside the Extreme Health Academy, I think I put food as like one of the 10th or 11th most important things, because food is just, when you eat food, you're basically just eating electrical energy. You're eating photons. Food is a repository for light. And so when you are eating food is all tied to photosynthesis, all tied to the light web of the planet. And so all of this is designed to bring more light into your body. And so that's why, there's a lot of things that we can do before we even change our diet that can radically affect and alter our health, I think, in a more powerful way than the food. So anyway, I probably should do something on the website, but we're going to do a little course inside the Extreme Health Academy about the different things that you can do to radically alter your health. Just one of them that I've been, like many of you guys know, I've been really into the light piece the last few years. These glasses right here are from Raw Optics, and I really like them a lot. I also wear the ones from Blue Blocks. We've had Andy Mant on the show, and we've also I use the ones from True Dark. These glasses have had the most tremendous impact on my health. Blue blocking glasses, whether or not you get them from Raw Optics or Blue Blocks, they all have different styles. So just all three of them are in our store, but you can just click through and just pick, different ones that have, different styles. But they've had the biggest impact on my health in the last few years, just learning about how to block and mitigate this blue light. I know I keep talking about it, and I keep trying to bring it out into the mainstream because it's sort of a little bit, like I said before, a little bit challenging with people when they're focused primarily on the food. And so, yeah, EMF is definitely one of the non-native EMF issues that's causing our biggest environmental impact since 1879, when we had the electrification of America, when electricity became part of our world in the late 1800s, 1879. And I pulled up a graph a while back showing the diseases basically running parallel to this electrical grid, this electricity that we're now using. And for some reason, we're using AC current, 60 hertz AC, and alternating current. It's really damaging to the body. It's really damaging. We should be on DC. That's what our body natively uses. That's what the fields of the earth are, DC, direct current. And for some reason, we went with 60 hertz, which is the most damaging of the levels of hertz that there is as well. So if you go over to Europe, it's a little bit different, and they use different electrical frequencies. And it's just, for some reason, we just picked the most unhealthy, damaging one of all. And so this is what we're living in. And recently we had Brian Hoyer out to our house. We've got a bunch of YouTube videos that we're working on editing and putting onto our YouTube channel. But dude, he did a whole home assessment for our house, and he has like $30,000 worth of equipment. And one of the reasons why we wanted to have him come to our house is because we have a 5G tower that's looming over our neighborhood that's going to be activated December 22nd, which is like, thank you for that Christmas gift. It's like, thank you for the Christmas gift. December 22nd, we get a 5G tower that gets switched on 3 days before Christmas. And so we're looking to move, but you can't move your whole life, right? So what do? Go live in the middle of the woods? Adele, I know you're up in Los Angeles. You're an animal. I know you're down in San Diego, and most of you that are watching, New Jersey and different parts of the world, even in Egypt or Spain that you guys are on. It's like you live in cities, you have these issues. And so the reason why is we had him come out to our house and use his $30,000 worth of equipment. You wouldn't believe how much the dirty electricity in our walls spiked his meters, and it was just incredible. And this is just the average sort of, the field coming from the back of our refrigerator would go out like 4 to 6 feet in all directions from the back of the refrigerator. It's crazy. So we really got to do something about our home environment. This is really critical. I know it's a lot of money. I think he charges about $1,200 to come out to do a home assessment. That's just to find out what's wrong, let alone spending the money to actually fix the situation. But in my opinion, if I were to want to start somewhere, if I were living in a place, the place we're living in now, I want to move from anyway. So it's challenging, right? You pour all this money into fixing a place you're just going to move from. So if I were living in a place that I wanted to, it was like my forever home kind of a thing. If I were living in a place like that, before I would buy like a Vitamix blender, before I would go on a cleanse, I would put money and start saving up to mitigate the non-native EMF in our homes. So Adele says here, why are you wearing amber glasses during the day? Just curious. Good question. Well, one of them was I wanted to wear these. These are the Raw Optics ones, and I like them a lot. And I wanted to test them out during the show. But one of the reasons why I'm not wearing my yellow glasses are really what you should wear during the daytime. One of the main reasons I'm not wearing them in the daytime now is because I don't want any blue light affecting my eyes. The issue with it, though, is that if you're working at a place if you're indoors for 8-10 hours a day, if that were the case with me, I definitely would be wearing the yellow ones because I don't want all of the blue mitigated and blocked from my eyes like they are now, because then I'd start producing melatonin and I start falling asleep. So that's why. But if I were going somewhere where I needed to be awake for 8-10 hours during the middle of the day and I was going to be inside, then I'd wear my yellow ones. But because I'm only going to be doing this show for like an hour and a half or so, it's okay. I'm just blocking all. And then right after the show, I'm going to go outside. Right before the show, I made sure to get direct sunlight into my eyes to get a circadian rhythm reset there. And then right after the show, I'll go get more light in my eyes directly by looking about 30 degrees off from the sun. The way I look at it is our mitochondria are like the timers on a clock. Our mitochondria are constantly sending out frequencies and signals to our environment to figure out what kind of environment we're in. And when we're constantly in an environment that's not it's not natural, then our body doesn't know what to do with that. And so when we're sending the wrong signals all day, every day, and by the way, eating like a banana in Canada in the middle of winter, that's also sending a wrong signal to your mitochondria. Because bananas, like I said before, food is a repository of light, right? So when you're eating a banana, which has captured the photons from the sun, the biophotons from the sun, from a temporal environment, from a tropical environment, and then you transport those bananas to somewhere like Canada, and then you eat them at the wrong time of the year in the middle of winter, you're sending all kinds of confusing messages to your gut and microbiome. These are all things that are going to play out in the future that we don't really think about yet. So that's one of the main reasons why people are having gut issues, is because they're eating food that's not local to their environment, and it's not even in there. And if it is local to the type environment that they're in, they're eating it at the wrong time of year. And so Dr. Stephen Gundry was on the show a while back, and he was saying that during the winter months, he doesn't eat fruit at all. He doesn't eat any kind of fruit because it's not natural. It doesn't grow where he lives. And so that's why I typically make sure to go out and get sun in my eyes all throughout the day. Because if you think about a clock, like if you set 2 of those old style clocks and you set them and you let them run for a few years without checking on them, they're going to be radically different in time. And so the way that our body constantly understands where we are in our life and where we are in our time and the seasons of life and the actual seasons of the year and the time of day, all of that, your body gets that from being in a natural environment and through the photoreceptors in our skin, which is why you see me now blocking all the blue light on my arm whenever I'm indoors. Sometimes I forget my shirt, and I don't remember. But when I do, I notice it. And so I like to block up and cover everything when I'm indoors. You can probably see here too, my makeshift, I just cut the arm off a sleeve and I'm covering my thyroid. So, if I'm going to do these shows, these shows are very damaging for me to do for my health. They're radically affecting my mitochondria. So if I'm going to do these shows, everything comes at a cost, right? So if you're going to make a lot of money, it comes at the cost of a lot of different things: stress, lifestyle, a lot of different things that you pay for if you're trying to earn a lot of money in a very stressful job. If I'm going to do these shows, these are damaging to my mitochondria. So this is why I have this blue shield device. You can probably see it in my pocket. This is their portable device. This is available in our store. And I have this zapper that I forgot to put on, but I'll put it back on around my waist. And I wear a necklace, what do you call it, a Q-link. And so I use all these things to help mitigate some of this, the price that I'm paying for doing shows like this, right? So I wanted to share with you guys too. Hopefully, Adele, that answered your question. Hopefully. Oscar says maybe shungite to block EMF. Yeah, I've heard good things about shungite. I have a shungite necklace as well, and I wear that. I just forget sometimes when I'm running out to the office or to the studio where I'm now. Sometimes I forget some of this stuff. But 33AJBF is from England. Awesome. Great to have you here. Very, very cool. How about electricity from solar panels? Yes. Good point you bring up. Very, very good point. Monosterat Celis. that is really key. So what a lot of people aren't realizing and thinking about these days is people are going to solar, but the electricity coming from solar is a real problem. It's a real problem. And so there are devices, I believe, and you can look at the work of Dr. Sam Milham, and he wrote a book called Dirty Electricity, I think. We're going to get him on the show. Dr. Sam Milham, Millham, I think, Milham. But you can look him up and you'll find him, Dr. Sam Milham. And he talks a lot about this issue with electricity and solar panels. So the issue with the solar panels, once again, it's great. It's capturing the sun and the energy that way, but everything comes at a cost, right? So like, it's saving you lots of money. It's allowing you to be a little bit more free. It's allowing you to be unplugged from the grid a little bit and to be less controlled. But the only issue is that it's producing a huge amount of AC current, alternating current, which is a real issue. And so what you need are solar panels that are going to continue to stay and use and utilize DC current, direct current. So look at the work of Sam Milham. A lot of you guys might think I know a lot, or I have the answer for everything. I know just enough to really kind of mess around, So I know a lot of resources and I have a lot of experience, but there's not any one person that has all the answers. I might be able to help you with a couple things here and there, but You're an Animal says, the last time I was in Los Angeles, I saw multiple churches with cell towers stacked up. Yeah, so look for that. Look for anytime you see a lot of clear cutting of trees in your area, know that they're most likely looking to put up cell towers, because these 5G towers, from what I understand, they're pretty weak in the sense that they're not able to carry out. So the demand for what they're going to do is way higher than we have the technology to be able to produce. So what that means is that we need them for like self-driving cars, right? So that people can download their Netflix videos quicker and all this crazy stuff. There's going to be tremendous demand placed on them. Fast internet, all this stuff. So in order to facilitate that, they have to put towers everywhere. And so the problem is that these towers, because they're weak and they need to put lots of them everywhere, they're going to start disguising them, like You're an Animal saying, as at churches, at open land. They're going to clear trees because the trees block the wireless, going to and from the towers. Which, I mean, talk about what culture would be so stupid to cut down the very thing that cleans our air and gives us life and provides us with water, right? By bringing up the water table on the earth and providing shade and carbon dioxide. Cut those very life-giving things down and replace it with a fake tree that is killing us. Only our culture, right? So what happened to us as a culture? Like a lot of times you see people and you're like, if they're acting very violent or something, what happened to you as a kid, Like what happened to us as a culture that we don't question whether or not that's a good idea? Like, I don't know where we went wrong, but somewhere down the line, we went wrong to the extent that we actually just believe everything we see on TV. It's actually crazy. It's actually just absolutely nuts. Like it says in that book, we live in the best of times and we live in the worst of times. Fortunately, we have mitigation strategies for all of this stuff, but man, it takes a lot of work to change your environment. But I highly encourage you guys to do it. Oscar says, I have the idea that if shungite blocks EMF and this tick contains C60, therefore, in fed yin C60 in oil can protect us. Also, they say C60 protects mitochondria. I've heard that as well. For those that aren't familiar, we did a show with Bob Greska, and we actually take his C60. I like it a lot. But it's basically what it is it's a tiny sort of 18-sided buckyball sort of magnet that's in the form of carbon. It's a carbon molecule. And because of its size, it's able to penetrate all over the body. And so it's able to electrically pull toxins to itself through the electrical charge that it itself has, and then replace it with an electron, or it pulls off the bad electron as well as pulling the toxin out to make stable, electrons. Because when your cells don't have enough electrons, and they become they go crazy inside your body. And so to stabilize that, you need to add an electron. Or I'm sorry, take one away, I think. Yeah, because if it's got 3, you want it balanced with 2. And so anyway, that's what C60 is. We did a whole show with Bob Greska about that product, and it's pretty interesting. We don't make any financial, money from that, but it's a cool product. I like it. It's part of the mitigation strategies that we need to start adopting in our world today. If we're going to live in this bizarre world where everyone thinks that this self-driving cars and Google apps and blue light and EMF and 5G and, sticking our kids with, vaccines and thinking that somehow produces immunity. If we're going to live in this world that's so crazy and bizarre like this, then, having some of these strategies is very, very, I would say, almost necessary at this point. Bruce says, hey, good to have you here, man. I'm listening from my truck in Georgia. Wow. How did you find us? Man, today's culture is so, like I said before, we live in the best of times, we live in the worst of times. Man, this is so incredible to be able to have an impact on people's lives, in some weird, bizarre way through doing a YouTube show and doing a live show. I mean, if this were 1985, we couldn't do any of this stuff. Just tuned in. What electron or product were you speaking about? Zainab Farah. Yeah, I've seen you before. Great to have you here again. Pretty cool. That was a product called C60 by Bob Greska. He was on our show. If you go into our YouTube channel, actually, you know what? Shoot, you can't, because we had to take that down. Ooh. I don't know if I was supposed to say that, but we had to take that down because I think he may have been getting some blowback from the powers that be. So they actually asked us to take it down because I think that they were maybe contacted by people. I don't know. But I think it's c-60.com. And they sent us an edited version. Let me take a swig of water here real quick. So they gave us a brand new video where they removed some of the things that may have been construed as claims. So yeah, look it up, C-60. Some people are saying it's the most interesting thing going, and the most powerful supplement you could ever take. They're showing a 90% increase in lifespan with mice that are on C60 because of its detoxification effects. And even if it's somewhat true, with regards to mice, let's say like a 90% increase, that's a lot, right? So if you get a mice to live almost double the amount it normally lives, then that's a lot. So if you translate that to humans, you're looking at 140-year lifespan, right? So even if it weren't that big, it shows you right there that detoxification is more important than the food we're eating. A lot of times we think, oh, we're deficient in zinc or we're deficient in selenium, and we are, but we're not deficient because we're not consuming zinc or selenium. We're deficient because of the food we're actually eating. So it's not that we're not consuming food. Our deficiencies are caused by the food we're eating, which is crazy, right? So the food we're eating, everything comes at a cost. So it's not just, oh, it's got certain vitamins and minerals in it. If it's a bad food, like let's say it's just a really like a pizza or something, like a hamburger, really, really poor food, from factory farm animals and non-organic and all that stuff. It's not like, oh, it's got a little bit of calcium, it's got a little bit, magnesium. It's not like it's got a little bit of that, but then the other stuff is sort of innocuous. No, the other stuff that's in the food that we're eating is actually pulling minerals and nutrients out of our bodies. It's like when you listen about coffee and they say that, for every cup of coffee, you need to drink at least 5 cups of water because it dehydrates you. It's kind of like that. I drink coffee every day, and I think it's a wonderful superfood. But, everything comes at a cost, right? And so this shows me, the C60 research shows me that detoxification is way more important than the food we're eating. We don't even really need that much food. We just sort of eat for psychological purposes, and to keep our blood sugar levels stable and things like that. But I mean, to be honest, you don't really need all that much to sustain and to thrive in your life. We just eat because we're trained to eat, and we're, living in this modern culture, and we're addicted to eating and that kind of thing. So, Spaceman, pulsed electromagnetic fields is a winner with helping with bad EMFs. Yeah, that's why I have the, I've got a little mat in our place called the IMRS. I think it's in our store. We've had Bryant Myers on the show. If you guys are interested in learning more about pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, PEMF, listen to the show that we did with Bryant Myers. That was a really cool show. Like that guy a lot. He knows his stuff. He's written a couple books all about PEMF as well. Urine Animal says, I like the idea of C60, but it is a nanoparticle, and I'm a bit concerned how that could play a role in feeding already existing nanotech in our bodies with tax-free carbon building blocks. Yeah, it sounds like that sounds like maybe Tony Pantelleresco question there. Nanoparticles. He's really into the nano. I was just talking to via email our guest Nathan Walls. And he's a really great guy. We had him on the show. He's on our YouTube channel, Nathan Walls, and we talked a lot about light. And he was asking me about urine therapy, and he was talking about deuterium levels. See, these are all things that we don't hear about. Nanoparticles, deuterium. Deuterium is a subset of hydrogen, and you want to lower your deuterium levels as much as you possibly can. And this is kind of the thing. It's we're not really taught about. I mean, you don't learn about deuterium or nanoparticles from most podcasts out there, right? Or let alone, you don't hear about these kinds of things, or blue light, toxic blue light and how it affects your mitochondria. You don't learn about that from average other podcasts, but then you certainly don't learn about it from, your basic health course in high school, right? You're not going to learn about any of this stuff. So that's why it's really important, I think, to avail ourselves of this information. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think I was sharing this the other day. I was listening to something, and the guy was putting together a mitochondrial sort of cocktail. And it was a product that he's been formulating that helps women go through breast cancer treatments through chemotherapy. Basically, anybody with chemotherapy, taking chemotherapy or radiation, because it protects the mitochondria, much like hydrogen does. The hydrogen we have in our store. You can buy a hydrogen machine and make your own hydrogen water now. That's available in our store. Or you can buy the tablets and put that in your water. But this product, according to him, and he had no ties to the product. He was just a researcher, but he was talking about how it tremendously helps with your mitochondria and getting through chemo. And it's called ntfactor.com. And I thought it was interesting. So when you learn about things like this, it's really amazing that you have all of the tools at your resources, as a resource. Melissa says, I love you guys in the chat room, man. You guys are so cool. And I've just been sort of looking at different chats and different live events on YouTube and comments, and I don't know what it is. I've somehow attracted the most amazing audience. All of you guys are just so cool. We've only had one troll one time, and all of the members that were in the chat room sort of ganged up on him, and and now he's nowhere to be found. And so it's so much fun for me guys, for me to hang out with you guys. Melissa down at the River Carlisle says, I'm not sure if it's called grounding or earthing, but does coming in contact with the Earth's field help reduce the effect of electric and radiation? Wow, that is a very complex question. And I am not an electrical engineer. I'm not an electrician. But here's what I can tell you from what I know and the people I've talked to, that it depends where you are. There's a lot of conflicting people saying this, that, and the other about grounding. Sam Milham will tell you that he's never found a place. Hang on one second. Let me get a sip of water here. The world is good again. Sam Milham will say that there's not a place where you can't find stray voltage in the earth. And that's because we're not using wires and cables in many places in the United States to take back the extra voltage that should go back to the power company. So he was saying that grounding is bad on all fronts. Other people say the electrical field of the earth is actually, it's not a pull, it's a push. So some people will say that if you have electrical equipment in your room, that's going to be putting off a field. And if that electrical equipment, if you're in that room, that field is going to look to ground itself. And so if you're grounding, it's going to go through you to the ground. So that's what some other people say. And then some people say, well, no, the earth actually emits a field, a magnetic field itself. So it's pushing its energy through you, almost creating like an invisible barrier where the electrical fields can't use you as a conduit to go to ground. So with all of that said, the most ideal situation is for you to, if you're going to ground indoors, to ground directly to the ground outside, and don't use that third prong, because then you're just tying yourself into the electrical grid, which has all manner of dirty electricity on it. So you don't want to do that third prong. That's dangerous. Ground directly to the ground in a room that doesn't have any electrical equipment in it. But then that presupposes that, you know, you're protecting yourself from 5G and other people that have wireless devices. So it's really complex. It's really a complex issue. I ground at certain times for certain reasons. So it's kind of like wearing these glasses in the light. It's like there's a clear, specific reason why you would do it at certain times and wear different colors ones at different times and all of that. So there's a whole science to learning how electrical fields and electricity and magnetism, as well as light, affect the human body. So Karen says, just like all the drug commercials that are on every second TV are brainwashing people into thinking they need all this stuff to get healthy. It makes me so sad. You know what's crazy, Karen, is like if you go to other countries, or if people from other countries come here, they're just sort of blown away by these pharmaceutical commercials. It's really bizarre. It wasn't until the mid-90s, I think, that that was passed, where now drug companies can start running their ads. It's crazy. Maybe you can get an Ayurvedic doctor, Oscar says, to talk about detoxification and panchakarma. You know, we had a really great doctor on. We should have her on again. We had her in studio, Sandhya Ramaswamy. I think that's her name. If you go to our archives, I think we did talk about detoxification. Sandhya Ramaswamy. What a name, right? That's an awesome name. Yeah, if you go to our archives on our show, you can find that interview. We've got 600 and plus. So we've got a lot of people that we have talked to. I just saw someone talk about Tony Pantellerisco. I just listened to Tony this morning for the first time. He is also a pretty funny guy. Are you talking about, Rick Beck from the forums in the academy? Tony, do you mean Tony Pantellerisco? Zainab says, well, it's because you are an amazingly knowledgeable and open and resourceful. Tony is a cool guy. He has lots of Word and PDF notes on everything he talks about regarding nano. Yeah, totally. He's been on the show. Tony's been on the show before. He's a good guy. I like him. Coffee smoothies for me, 95% of the time, loaded in more nutrients and hydrating properties than naked coffee. Yeah, I do coffee smoothies as well. I call it my coffee snack. It's our little coffee snack. Oscar says, Justin, I'm not sure if I have to continue to use my earthing sheet connected to the socket. What do you think? Yeah, I wouldn't ground to the socket myself, personally. So it's interesting, right? Because this whole grounding thing, all of this stuff, if you think about it, guys, all of this stuff is screaming. It's a message from God that we're not living proper lives connected to nature. It's a blanket message to all of us. Okay, because what I was going to say to Oscar was, okay, so I think, Oscar, you're in Spain, if I'm correct. And just because you're in Spain doesn't mean anything about what I'm about to say here. But if you're on like the second, third, or fourth floor, there's issues with that from a health perspective, from a mitochondrial perspective. It's very damaging to be, the further you are away in physical proximity to the crust of the earth, the more it impacts from an inflammatory level your nervous system and your mitochondrial system. So if you're living on a third or fourth floor, or even if you're sleeping on a second floor of a house, that's not optimal for any of us. It's not normal. It's not natural to do that. So what I was going to say about your thing, Oscar, was with regards to grounding. If you have to, like, let's say you're on the second or third floor story and you can't ground, like, let's say grounding is the most beneficial thing ever and there's no subtlety or nuance to it. Like, let's say just grounding by itself is the best thing ever, right? But you live on a third floor and you're like, I can't ground to anything but the third prong in the socket, right? What is it about humans? I'm not saying you're doing this, Oscar, but I'm saying just in general, this is something like the first thing I would think of would be like, it's like what I do at night, right? It's clear that it's like, I finally get a chance to work, right? And that's when I'm like producing another podcast because you live on a second floor or to stay up at night. Like, I'm talking to myself when it comes to staying up at night. I shouldn't be doing this. And so for me, like doing this show right now. I've got all this, I'm wearing all these clothes because I want to make sure to connect with you guys, but I also don't want to damage my mitochondria. So it becomes a balance. And ultimately, the best thing that we could all do of our life should be such that we are connected to nature as much as we possibly can. So how that plays out in your life and how that plays out in my life is going to be different based on what we do, the stress levels that we have, the kind of demands that are placed upon us. Something that I've been thinking about recently is Daniel Vitalis says rewilding yourself. It's basically plugging yourself back into nature. You're an Animal says, yeah, Tony's a cool guy. He's got lots of Word and PDF notes. Let's see. Depends. Morning. Let's see. Adele. It's great to have you here, Adele. Gosh, you guys are talking up a storm here. It's pretty cool. Chris is here. Hi, everyone. Adele, I'm curious about walking on the LA. I'm not sure if you have access or you're close to it. Chris says, glad you mentioned that, Lisa, because that's one of the things that we do is we do Qigong. So, of course, it's in our store. And what I like about it is like it's 10-minute session in the morning and a 10-minute grounding session in the evening. But I'm going to look her up, Barbara Eden. So Qigong is a really awesome form of exercise. It's really cool because it's like an active meditation, a moving meditation. So it's completely different. Barbara Eden, I'm showing here on, she's an American film actress. She was on I Dream of Jeannie. 87 years old. Is that the same Barbara Eden? Huh. Yeah, okay, yeah. Zainab says, I think Adele Langdon, that the energy you get from walking on earth soil should outweigh the positivity that is sprayed with pesticides or some other chemicals. I know, right? So that's the issue, right? Is you got these... there's always an up and down side, right? To all of these things, there's a plus minus here, and it's really challenging. So, but then also you're getting a lot of benefit if you look into the work of what is her name, Carrie, or even people that I know about. I forgot, but basically they talk about the biomechanics of the body. So not wearing shoes is also going to have a tremendous impact on how your feet ambulate across the plane and how they function and how they help you and improve your balance and things like that, prevent bunion formation, things like that. So allowing your toes to be spread apart and to balance, that's more natural anyway. So even if you are getting a little bit of pesticides and chemicals, hopefully, I think you have a far infrared sauna too, right, Adele? One of the ones that we sell. By the way, we're running a promotion on the far infrared sauna right now for Black Friday. So if you guys go to, I'll put a link in the chat room if you guys are interested in any of the Black Friday things that we have here. extremehealthradio.com/Black Friday. Email me and I will let you know. We're going to be running that for the next couple days. This is an interesting article here. Blood pressure. So this is so indicative of the modern culture that we live in that it's just really bizarre. So check this out. Being pulled. Chlorothiazide could contain an impurity that has been classified as a probable human carcinogen known to cause cancer. The batch affected by the recall are the 100 milligram and 25 milligram tablet with a lot number JB8912. Patients who are currently on the medication are advised to talk to their doctor before stopping use. My goodness, right? This losartan potassium medical model